Just over 100 years ago, powered flight is still blue sky thinking. But a few audacious engineers are hell-bent on trying to make it happen.
According to brothers Orville and Wilbur Wright, it began for them with a toy from France, a small helicopter brought home by their father. It was little more than a stick with twin propellers and twisted rubber bands that probably cost 50 cents. Orville's first teacher in grade school would remember him at his desk, tinkering with bits of wood. Asked what he was up to, he told her he was making a machine of a kind that he and his brother were going to fly someday. We're told in high school history class in about 5 minutes that they were bicycle mechanics from Dayton, Ohio, who invented the airplane. That's hardly a fragment of the story. They were entirely self-taught mechanically in terms of the physics and aeronautics of it. And they were entirely self-taught in the making of machinery, making of bicycles, making of the airplane. They were not uneducated, even though they never went to college, never even finished high school, because they grew up in a house full of books. Dickens, Mark Twain, Hawthorne, the poetry of Virgil, history, philosophy, theology, natural history, everything. And their curiosity could not have been greater because of that. They had worked with intense concentration and drive for 4 years. First to build a glider that would operate as they hoped, and then to build larger gliders. And every time they went up, they knew they were risking their lives. They could be killed. So it wasn't just they were brilliant, they were extremely brave. Then they put a motor on the glider, not knowing whether it would work. They knew they could do it. They didn't just think they could do it. They knew it.
In high school, we learn about bicycle makers Wilbur and Orville Wright. But there was another member of their team, mechanic Charlie Taylor, and together they would pioneer air flight. Their challenge, build an engine light enough to fly. As the team weighs up the problem, Taylor has a flash of inspiration. Instead of using iron, they turn to a new material that's strong, malleable, but above all, light: aluminum. In only 6 weeks, they build their engine, weighing just 152 pounds. And it sparks the aviation revolution.
They're 4 miles from the nearest town, which was Kitty Hawk, which was nothing, absolutely nothing. And they went there because they wanted wind. And Orville, in one of his notebooks on bird observation, says, "No bird ever soared in a calm." Now that's not just how they flew, that's how they went through life. That adversity lifts you up. If everything's easy, everything's handed to you, if everything works naturally, you're not going to do much. Orville took off at Kitty Hawk on the Outer Banks of North Carolina on a severely cold day in December. December 17th, 1903, the first time that a human being flew on a motor-driven airplane that succeeded in staying aloft. Now, the very first flight was very brief, and not very long, 12 seconds, 120 feet. And he rode like he was on a bucking bronco. But they knew it would work. So they kept on experimenting through the day. By the end of the day, Wilbur had flown over 800 feet, and they knew absolutely that they had achieved what they wanted to do. They had succeeded, but they also knew they had more work to do. They had to create a plane, an airplane, that was practical, that would bank and turn and fly in a figure eight or fly in a circle, stay aloft, come down, fly 18 inches above the grass. Under perfect control, they had not only to build such a plane, but to learn to fly it. Very key point. They just didn't invent the thing, they learned to fly it. And that didn't finally happen until 1905. So there were 2 more years at it after the historic moment at Kitty Hawk, but they never stopped improvements, never stopped learning, never stopped reaching for new ideas. Now, every single time that either Wilbur or Orville Wright went up in on one of their test flights, whether it was the gliders they built in order to learn how to fly with the wind, on the wind, or whether it was their flying machine, they knew perfectly well that they could get killed. And they didn't just go up 3 or 4 times, they go up 50 to 100 times in a year after year. They knew they could get killed. In fact, they would never fly together, because if one got killed, then the other would still be around to continue with the quest, the mission.
Wilbur and Orville's determination and Taylor's mechanical insights power the Wright brothers into the history books. They opened the doors to the aviation age and forever changed the world and the way people would travel. And it was just the beginning. 46 years after their first flight, their legacy would live on in an invention that would revolutionize commercial airspeed.
3, 2, 1.
And reaching today's incredible acceleration in the skies requires one of the most influential innovations in human history, the jet engine. It generates enough thrust to power an aircraft at much greater speeds. De Havilland is the first to hatch an audacious plan, a commercial aircraft powered by the jet, the Comet. It's a radical leap in speed, almost 500 miles per hour, compared to around 300 for prop planes. Boeing and Douglas joined the party in the late 50s. In 1970, Boeing introduces the gold standard, the 747. With the unique double-decker design, this jumbo jet is able to carry over 500 people. It's a magic number, opening the floodgates for the movement of the masses. But speed was always the quest, and 22 years before the 747, a brave pilot paved the way for advancements in faster air travel. The challenge was to build a plane aerodynamic enough to fly over 760 miles an hour, breaking through an invisible barrier, the speed of sound. 24-year-old test pilot Chuck Yeager agrees to attempt the flight. And scaling up that plane to carry a pilot at such speeds meant flying into the unknown. They knew propellers couldn't do it. They knew jets couldn't do it. Their only choice? Rockets. This experiment proved that the sound barrier could be broken. And for engineers pioneering flight, the sky was the limit. Today's aviation pioneers are aiming high. Their dream is to accelerate from supersonic to hypersonic speeds, almost 4,000 miles an hour. Perhaps the closest we'll get to time travel, reaching anywhere on the planet in a matter of hours. Do that, and the world will truly change as the boundaries and borders that divide us vanish with speed.
According to the Wall Street Journal, it's estimated that this summer alone, from June 1 to August 31, 222 million people will fly in airlines, not counting the private planes and the military planes. Last year alone, at O'Hare Airport in Chicago, 70 million people flew in and out of that airport. And we take it for granted. We fly 30, 35, 40,000 feet, nothing to it. And yet, who did it? How did it happen?